having a mini crisis today. I don't feel like I fit in anywhere.
The date is July 9th, 2020. That's 32-year-old Rebekah Barsotti, tears streaming down her cheeks as she video journals on her phone, only to be interrupted by one of her mini animals, a Belgian Malinois puppy. It's as if the puppy understands exactly what Rebekah is saying. He jumps up and licks Rebekah's face as her sobs turn to laughter. If there was one place Rebekah belonged, it was with the animals who she loved and who loved her. 8 days after her mini crisis, she penned this poem on her iPhone notes on July 17th, 2020. Waking up to be the enemy. I never know what lies ahead of me. Which way the current flows, rapidly changing tides. Never know what hides. For those wondering about our continuing coverage on Rebekah Barsotti's case, you are in the right place. And for those new to the story of Rebekah Barsotti, you are also in the right place. Please stay with us and please listen to learn about Rebekah's story. Many have been investigating these past months behind the scenes. And I will say this, journalists and media outlets are following along. There is an unseen army. I'm going to predict that soon, so many more will know Rebekah Barsotti's name. And it won't be a story that ends with a missing woman who accidentally drowns with her beloved dog. Mineral County Sheriff Mike Toth might tell you otherwise, though.
Well, I believe that she's in the river, and I think she drowned, probably.
He'll share how Rebekah's case has been an open investigation for over a year, and that the man-hours spent to recover Rebekah's body so intense, this tiny department of 6 deputies should be applauded, not questioned. He'll share there's evidence, and we'll take a look at that evidence. Cerberus's body was found less than a week after he went missing, but it took 10 months before Rebekah's remains surfaced. Rebekah's alleged remains were cremated just last month, a complete shock to her mother, Angela, and stepfather, Jerry Mastrovito, as autopsy results were still pending. What happened to Rebekah Barsotti, a 33-year-old woman who went missing on a hot summer day on July 20th, 2021 in Superior, Montana, is still a question. In fact, 14 months later, there are more questions than answers, still. And as I mentioned, precious little help from those Mineral County authorities in this perplexing case out of rugged western Montana. Whether or not we can help find those answers is a question in itself, but I believe that the answers are as active as the Montana rivers that Rebekah loved, rapidly flowing, spreading, ready to be found, and ready to glisten in the sunlight. But while those white waters of the Clark Fork River are hardly still, they run very deep in an area rife with small-town politics, close circles of good old boys. At last week's commissioner meeting, when County Attorney Deb Jackson, along with Deputy County Attorney Wally Congdon, walked into Friday's County Commissioners meeting and explained that their open-door meeting needed to be a closed-door meeting, public citizens finally spoke up.
You know, and I hate to say it, this county, since I've lived here, has gotten really...
Sir, I don't do what's against the law. And for you to contribute that to our motives, I take offense to. Please don't do that.
I think it's a legitimate question myself.
If you're out there and you commit a crime and you don't want your name known, it's confidential. We don't.
The closed-door meeting allegedly never happened. Deb and Wally are seen walking out of the meeting, leaving a trail of even more questions. So many questions. Enough questions that I've decided I should start from the beginning.
Catch it up. Sir, get the stick.
And that begins with Rebekah's love of a dog named Cerberus.
Learning how to swim for the first time. Good boy, sir. You're doing so good. Good boy.
She adopted shortly after that first video you heard. Rebekah crying, wondering if she belonged.
I don't feel like I fit in.
Cerberus came into her life shortly after.
Good boy.
Rebekah and her beloved dog Cerberus were allegedly last seen at a popular recreation spot on the Clark Fork River near Superior, Montana.
Good, sir. It's okay. Good boy.
That was the original story. That summer day, July 20th of 2020, a witness saw Rebekah training her dog Cerberus at this popular recreation spot and swimming hole. News Nation even reported the sighting last year.
David's caretaker made the exchange, and Rebekah left the scene, making a stop at a scenic outlook where she and her dog Cerberus would get out of the car and head down to the Clark Fork River. Rebekah would never be seen from or heard from again.
It's swift moving, deep at places, and there's a bunch of swirling eddies that suck you under the water. It's a very dangerous. Like me standing there, I was like, I'd never go in that water.
But no one has ever learned who that witness is. Here is Sheriff Toth answering questions about the alleged witness, as well as an alleged 911 call that no one has ever heard. Here he is at an open county commissioners meeting on November 26, 2021. This, by the way, was the last county commissioners meeting to ever make its way to YouTube.
That's where everything's pointing to the river, because we've got items that are neatly set that would say somebody's sitting there enjoying themselves on a hot day with their dog, which is what she does and like to do. So everything matched, everything perfectly.
Can I
What is
interject for a minute?
Let me finish.
All right.
You did all the time. I didn't
All
interrupt
right.
you.
I'll let you finish.
Take right notes.
She did that all the time. She did that a lot.
She's missing her cane. No kidding.
Okay,
I'm just
go
trying
ahead.
to say that's why
Go ahead.
she's upset.
The driver's license and the credit card were perfectly laid out. You couldn't have laid
Sure.
them out better with a ruler.
Right.
Okay, and the whole thing is that the scenario is girl rescues dog. You're not going to take the time to take your driver's license and your credit card out of your pocket.
No.
You're not going to take the time. She wore sunglasses all day long because of nevus on the cornea of her eye. And so she wore sunglasses all day long. So law enforcement looks at the sunglasses
Now, can I
and the
interrupt you?
hat
The,
discarded as she
the
threw
witness
them
that
off.
found it says they picked up the driver's license.
What witness?
We're not going to tell you.
Exactly.
It's because you can't, if you reach out to him, now you're harassing a witness. We know who he is. We know who the family is. We're in contact.
And the 911 caller was an Oregon family.
This meeting, by the way, was the last county commissioners meeting to ever make its way to YouTube. And you can hear it in full by clicking on our Barsotti playlist on our YouTube channel, Hidden True Crime. It's a compelling conversation between Rebekah's mother, Angela Mastrovito, Sheriff Toth, and the commissioners.
It is our perception that there has been gross negligence of due diligence by the Mineral County Sheriff Department since the onset of this event.
But there are numerous press releases from the sheriff's office stating the last place Rebekah was ever seen was actually at a gas station called Town Pump. It's confusing, I know. In a press release released by Mineral County Sheriff's Department right after Rebekah's body was identified through dental records, they make it very clear that the last sighting of Rebekah was actually at Town Pump, a local gas station and convenience store in Superior, Montana. So now that we've established that Rebekah was last seen at Town Pump in Superior, Montana, and not the river while training her dog, let's get back to this ever-changing story. Stick with me here. Rebekah went missing a year after her mini crisis, and haunting poetry was recorded on her phone. She was in the process of divorcing her estranged husband, David Barsotti, who she had been married to since 2015. Barsotti was a decorated veteran, disabled due to his time in combat serving as a Marine. David wore an eye patch due to injuries while in combat. He had 2 full-time caretakers also due to injuries in combat, PTSD, and yet still managed to serve in the community, hosting breakfasts for veterans and telling one of his caretakers, Brandy Walker, as he went into one of his mini surgeries, if anything ever happened to him and Rebekah, to please make sure his Montana home and land went to homeless vets who needed a place to live. In fact, being a veteran, it seems, was David Barsotti's entire identity.
He called me a couple of times to see if I could help publicize a couple of things that he was working on. This free turkey dinner on Thanksgiving, which I did. And then I had another one, I think it was ham and turkey on New Year's Eve. He said, "Hey, my name's David Barsotti. I'm a disabled Marine vet, combat vet. I live over here at Sunrise Creek. I have a big, long aluminum ramp to get my wheelchair up and down into our house, Rebekah's and his. We're moving. We bought a house, and I'm wondering if you could come over and help me tear it apart and get it over to our new house. And I said, well, sure. Nice guy, but just too much gung-ho Marine, too much. Let me tell you about myself. Let me tell you what I did. Let me tell you everything that I am. It just, that just doesn't really sit right. We don't talk about that.
His license plates were Merc 1 and Merc 2. He flew a veteran's flag, made sure that other vets in the community were helped, and brought awareness to the plight of veterans everywhere. Rebekah was David's advocate, her phone notes filled with letters to doctors defending her husband and demanding better care. When one doctor's office explained that they could no longer see David due to his need to bring his large dog into the waiting room, Rebekah wrote an email explaining his PTSD and need for his therapy animal. But there was more. There was another side to the Barsotti's marriage.
Sitting in the back of the cop car. Whoop, whoop. That's fun. Don't get married.
There had been an assault. Rebekah called 911 on March 9th, 2021.
Hello. Oh, not too bad. Dysfunctional marriage just coming to an end, and so his power play was to try to take his boots and throw it against the door and slam and threaten to shoot the TV and shoot my hands and all these wonderful things that have caused our marriage to come to an end. And then he threatened to call the cops, so I told him that I'd do it first. So he's ending that story now. He's complying. He's being quiet because I threatened to call you guys. But prior to that, he wanted me out of the house at 1 a.m. in the middle of the street, and I am not allowed to pack up my life and leave. Supposedly we're being divorced tomorrow. So, but yeah. So he threatened to shoot you? Oh yeah, it's not the first time. There's actually a police report in Missoula where he threatened to kill me as well. Okay, so, did he threaten to kill you or threaten to shoot you? He said he was going to shoot my hands off. He was going to shoot your hands off? Yes. How did that make you feel? Not good. It's very... not good. What do you mean? I feel stupid for being in this relationship. It's very unnerving. It's scary. Okay.
The call resulted in David being arrested and a domestic abuse charge filed against David Barsotti. After David left handcuffed, Rebekah went back into the house and flipped back the covers of their bed. There, she found David's gun that he had been hiding from police, and she recorded, yet again, a video journal on her iPhone.
So I guess I have to start fucking recording everything now. I was remaking the bed so that I can go to sleep. And this handgun right here was about right there. That little indent, you can still kind of see it right in there. Yeah. So that was in the bed. And I don't know if Dave took that off before, after, or during the cop being here. I have no clue.
David spent 2 nights in jail, and Rebekah wrote a victim impact statement on March 9th, 2021. It states, please describe how you feel about the crime and how it has affected you and your family. And Rebekah writes, scared, afraid, and cornered. Due to recurring violent outbursts by David, I have not felt safe in my own home for years. He has threatened my well-being, as well as the well-being of my dog, my 6-month-old puppy. I will wake up in the middle of the night thinking I hear David screaming in anger, and I will be too afraid to get up and check on him. The sheet then asks Rebekah, do you have any additional comments you would like the court to know? And Rebekah replies, the police have been called due to domestic disputes multiple times in the past 6 years, both in Missoula and Mineral counties. David suffers from violent PTSD, severe TBIs, and self-medicating with alcohol for his chronic pain. Signature, Rebekah Barsotti, March 9th, 2021.
Can see the mountains, kind of.
While this domestic violence charge was a devastating experience, Rebekah took it as the final sign she needed to act. She moved out, not just out, but to a brand new city. If she didn't feel she belonged in Superior, why stay? She found a small place in Missoula, an hour away, perfect for her and her roommate Cerberus.
And then
got a yard for Sir so that he can actually go tinkle.
On April 6th, she let her mom, Angela, know. She did it. She was starting fresh in her own place. Tears had turned to hope, although soon she realized it wasn't going to be an easy divorce. After sharing marital vows with David, Rebekah had refused to sign numerous postnuptials, which demanded that due to divorce or death, David receive their house and land in Montana. Rebekah didn't feel it had been fair. Why not a 50-50 split? Or even an 80-20 split?
All new windows in Montana, that is huge.
On June 4th, Rebekah received a quit deed pertaining to her marital home with no additional information. On that same day, she informed her mother, Angela Mastrovito, via text, and I quote, June 4th, 2021. And for the record, he has threatened to beat me, shoot me, kill my dog, burn the house down, drive my truck into the river. There is zero reason for me to be compliant. While seeking advice from attorneys and deciding the best solution to divide the home and property she shared with David, Rebekah planned to return to Superior one more time. Rebekah and Bevan Harkin Adams, the caretaker of David, planned to meet at Town Pump to give Rebekah the last of her belongings. On July 20th, 2021, Rebekah arranged to meet with Bevan at Town Pump. Bevan would be the last person to see Rebekah alive. It seemed like a smart meeting place. Surveillance cameras were littered across the outside of the store, and it sat along a main road. She would not need to see David, as she had a no contact order against him, but David would be able to give Bevan, who was one of his two caretakers, the appropriate things to deliver to Rebekah. David would also let Bevan borrow his car. The drive to Missoula takes about an hour, and just before noon, Rebekah was snapping selfies together with Cerberus on their road trip while leaving Missoula. Those selfies are the last you see. Rebekah looks happy, her red hair in 2 braids. She's wearing a gray tank top, sunglasses, a sporty baseball cap, and a happy smirk dances across her face. Cerberus leans over her shoulder, as if he knew he needed to squeeze in for their last photo together. The time is 11:54 a.m. According to Superior locals who use the sunglass glare from this photograph to determine exactly where Rebekah was, this would put Rebekah arriving at Town Pump around 12:40 p.m. Although Bevan and law enforcement have determined the meeting happened around 2:15 p.m. So there are some unaccounted hours. We don't know where Rebekah was between 12:30 and 2:30 p.m. on July 20th, the last day anyone ever saw her. Cameras outside Town Pump are plenty, yet all that law enforcement has is a blurry still image of Rebekah talking to Bevan, who was driving David's truck. One journalist who was shown the photo admits not even they can be sure it's Rebekah.
Okay, yeah, you bet, Lauren. Monty Turner, born and raised in Missoula.
It's why I still say alleged last sighting.
Retired pretty much from broadcasting, radio, and television. Now I help out with the Mineral Independent and the Valley Press newspapers, or weekly newspapers.
You'd met Rebekah. David.
I knew her.
You knew her.
Yeah.
You knew her. Let's first talk about, the one question I had. How about that? The reason I reached out to you. The picture. The sheriff's office states in multiple news releases that the last place Rebekah was seen was Town Pump, where she was meeting David's caretaker to pick up her belongings. Town Pump, I've seen videos and pictures. They have multiple surveillance cameras, so it makes sense that there would be surveillance video. Everybody's been very curious about this because it is allegedly the last known sighting of Rebekah Barsotti. Now, we do hear about an alleged video at the river, but the truth is, nobody has seen Rebekah in a video, and I have heard that she's actually not in that video. And if you do read the sheriff's news releases with a fine-tooth comb, it continues to state the last place she was ever seen was Town Pump, not the river. So
my
that would
too.
Yeah, so that would imply there is no video of her at the river. That we'll get into that later. But what matters right now is, okay, if this was the last place Rebekah was seen, I needed to find somebody that had seen the surveillance video because the sheriff's department will not release it. And I found Monty.
Well, and I'll share with you how it all came about, Lauren, because at the time, I had no idea, none of us did, that it was going to be what this turned out to be. It had to be a couple of days after Rebekah went missing. And I happened to be in Mike Toth's office, the sheriff. And I stopped in weekly just to BS with him and maybe pick up a few tips or something. New deputies, got some new equipment coming in and everything like this.
And you were his friend, right? You were his friend.
Oh, yeah. Very much so. And you know, he and I shared a lot of information with each other because we were pals. We really were. He actually wanted me to be his campaign manager to run for re-election. And I said, I can't do that because I work for a newspaper. And he said, okay, why don't you quit? Blah, blah, blah. I
So
said,
you're an ethical journalist too.
I guess so. We'll see how at the end of the interview if you still think I am. So Mike and I start talking about this, and I don't know how it came up. I probably brought it up. I said, hey, what's going on, the missing gal with Rebekah? And he said, well, you know, she's been gone now a day or two, or how long this had been. He said, I just feel that she's probably stuck on a log someplace. This is before the dog had been found. This had been before, I can't remember the dog's
Cerberus.
name.
Even before Cerberus. Cerberus was found a week after her disappearance. Or
Yes.
6 days. So literally, this is the week she went missing.
Okay. Yep. This is a couple days after she went missing. And he said something to the tune of, we've got her on surveillance. We've got a picture of her at Town Pump, and David Barsotti's caretaker was giving her a box of her belongings that she wanted. And he said she had made arrangements with David or the caretaker, something like this, to meet at Town Pump at a certain time and hand the box over. And he said, here, I got a picture. I'll show you. So he went onto his laptop and showed me and popped up. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, God dang it. How can you tell who's what? It was a grainy, black and white, gray picture. I could tell there were two women. I couldn't identify who either one was, but you could just tell that there were women, probably by their haircuts. And there was a box in the middle and it was being handed over. I don't think Mike at the time, why he showed me, just because we were friends and I was just curious, not having any idea everything was going to explode the way it did. I probably shouldn't have seen it, but you know, he showed it to me and entrusted me, and I've gone public that I have seen that picture, but there's no way I could identify anybody in it.
And I think there's two important points to bring up.
Okay.
One was, you know who Rebekah is. You have met Rebekah.
Mhm.
So this isn't you like looking at her photo and trying to see if you could see her. You actually know Rebekah, have talked to Rebekah, and you could not tell it was Rebekah.
Could not.
Secondly, he was showing this to you on a laptop. I find that interesting. This wasn't a cell phone. This isn't eyesight issues. The photo was on a laptop.
Yeah.
So you were seeing it on a laptop.
Right.
It's and what you're telling me is that it was black and white, that it was blurry, that allegedly the shapes were two women only because of the haircuts, and they had a box between them.
Yeah, the Kennedy assassination video is better than what I saw.
Wow. And if the blurry photo of a 2:15 meeting isn't already strange, again, Rebekah should have made it to Superior long before that time. Law enforcement alleged that after that 2:15 meeting, on her way back home to Missoula, Rebekah stopped for a break. They say Rebekah went to spend some time playing with Cerberus and relaxing by that river. It is true this is something Rebekah and Cerberus enjoy doing, but there is not any evidence we've seen that Rebekah was even at this river or seen at the river. That story has changed and shifted as quickly as the flow of that river. Press releases from the sheriff's office state the last place anyone saw her was Town Pump. I don't know when law enforcement learned Rebekah was missing, but Sheriff Toth explains they were losing sunlight. So in July, that was around 9:30 p.m.
Originally, this all happens like around 5 at night. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's getting dark. Deputies go out there with highway patrol. They search the banks. They don't see anything.
No one knows how the sheriff's office heard word Rebekah was missing. There is talk of a 911 call after her items were found on the riverbank. A family from Oregon was spoken of, and that was told to Rebekah's family. Another time it was mentioned 2 teenage boys called in. But who that is or what happened and why the sheriff's office is so determined Rebekah was at or in the river, despite not being seen there, is a major part of this mystery.
We reach out to David. He reaches out to David. David says, no, she's supposed to be living in Missoula. David says, what should I do? He says, you need to call her family. Call your family and tip them off that something's going on. Something's with Rebekah because we got these items and we got her car. Of course, now we're thinking it's a missing persons, which could be abduction, could be whatever. But with the deputy looking at it, there's no sign of a struggle there. He sees the phone. He hears what the one witness tells him about what the witness saw. And he says, well, it sounds like she's probably in the water.
Was there a witness there when the deputy arrived?
They had left.
They had left. Okay.
How convenient.
So
that place is always busy.
I guess, you know, my questions just continue to mount, though.
The Superior County Sheriff's Office heard word Rebekah was missing fairly quickly. So fast that, according to David, in a text to his mother-in-law, Angela Mastrovito, law enforcement actually visited David on the evening of July 20th, just hours after Rebekah's last selfie with Cerberus. Angela Mastrovito, who lives in Virginia, received this text around 8 p.m. Montana time, or to be exact, 8:09 p.m. The text that Angela Mastrovito received from her son-in-law, David Barsotti, that night, July 20th, 8:09 p.m. Hey, Mom, I just had a visit from the sheriffs, and I need to discuss with you out of respect for y'all. Becca came out and got her box from Bevan around 2 p.m. They met up at the gas station and went their separate ways. But one of Becca's flings, is what I gathered from the officer, called in and reported missing persons report. So they came here to my house asking me basically if I had abducted her. They went to Bevan's house and questioned her. She showed them the texts, which were time-stamped 2:16 p.m. So what I gathered from the officer is that one of Becca's boyfriends knew she was coming out here. So what I gathered from the officer is that one of Becca's boyfriends knew she was coming out here today. Becca, for whatever reason, is not talking to him or returning calls any longer. So he called in a missing persons report labeling me the prime suspect because she isn't returning his calls. The cop was vague, but he did let some things slip. That's what I pieced together. But this drama and the fact that she is telling people that I'm a dangerous individual capable of such things is very disturbing and calls to question her mental state of mind as well as drug usage. All of this will be brought up in court. But from now on, Bevan nor anyone I know will be assisting her again in any way at all. They are over her more than I am. The rest can be settled in court.
David did contact me at 8:09.
Mm-hmm.
That would be Eastern Standard or Montana time. Okay. So it was after 10 when I got it. I woke up the next morning and got it. But you know, the thing of it is that it was not just, hey, I need to let you know. He was aggravated. I have it in a text message. He was aggravated that somebody would even bother to knock on his door and question him.
Well, David, as you know, got his quirks.
So according to David, it was a fling who called 911, which would mean she was a missing person. And just hours after David had texted his mother-in-law that a fling reported Rebekah didn't come home, David started texting friends Rebekah had drowned. David texted his friend Nathan Jacobson on July 21st to share Rebekah had died. At 2:45 p.m., he wrote to Nathan, I quote, Becca's presumed dead, drowned on the river. Nathan responds, WTF? Seriously? Come on, man. Really? And then there are 2 missed calls from Nathan to Sergeant David Barsotti. Sergeant David Barsotti is how Nathan has him in his phone. David responds to those missed calls. I'm dealing with search and rescue, sheriffs and everyone else, but it is not longer a rescue mission, but recovery of her body. swept downstream trying to save her dog in a raging current. Sounds like the dog may have been located, but she is gone. Nathan's response, and I quote, "Did you help her disappear or ... David responds, "No, absolutely not. I never wished her harm." End quote. 5 days after that text message to Nathan, the body of Cerberus, badly bloated and almost unrecognizable, was found in the river, 10 miles downstream from where law enforcement alleged Rebekah's belongings were found. Cerberus's shock collar was embedded into his neck, and his body so badly decomposed, no autopsy was done. And despite private search and rescue teams being flown in by Rebekah's determined parents who moved from Virginia to Montana to search for their beloved daughter, and despite 2,000 man-hours of searching, according to Sheriff Mike Toth, without any sign of Rebekah, it took another 10 months before Rebekah's body mysteriously appeared on May 17th, 2022, high up on the North Riverbank, 10 more miles downstream from where Cerberus was recovered. While David was offered to identify the body, which he allegedly declined to do, the Mastrovitos were denied that opportunity over and over again, as they asked multiple times. There have been 2 autopsies, but the results seem unclear and inconclusive. The state crime lab's autopsy oddly identifies 2 tattoos that Rebekah does not seem to have, including a tattoo with orange stars on her left foot, when she doesn't have a tattoo on her left foot, but rather she has a dark-colored tattoo on her right foot. No stars, no color. Right foot.
Okay, so there were 2 autopsies. David said, after the second autopsy comes back and I'm cleared, this was a phone call. This was not email. He goes, I want to have a press conference. I want you to put it together. I've got a statement to make. People are going to jail. People are going to prison. And I said, Jesus. He goes, I'm giving it to you. And I said, I'm passing it on because I don't want to touch this firebomb because I might mess this thing up. And so it comes down to the day after the second autopsy, and he called me and said, okay, I'm pulling the trigger. Let's get something going on. I will be on the steps of the Mineral County Courthouse. I'm going to read a statement for about 10 minutes. I'm not going to answer questions. I'm just going to make this statement. And that's all it's going to be. And I said, okay, Dave, I'll see what I can do. So I notified 2 television stations in Missoula, and they said, we've got fires going on. We don't care. We got other things. I mean, this is kind of old news. I don't know what that statement was because I let him know. I said, they're putting out fires, literally, Dave. And it's just not a priority. And he goes, well, that's too bad.
So I've seen both autopsies.
You have?
Mm-hmm. The state crime lab's autopsy identified 2 tattoos that I don't think she has.
No. Okay. That's a good point. The day after they found the body, I had a conversation with Wayne Cashman, who's the undersheriff.
Okay.
And I said something, somehow we started getting on it. And he's like me, he's kind of a little overweight. And he said, God, yesterday was killer up and down that bank all day. And I said, what do you think? He goes, oh, yeah. He said, the tattoos match. Tattoo or tattoos. I don't know if it was plural. I can't remember right now.
Okay.
He said, she had to be underwater the whole time because her fingers were skeletal, but her flesh was there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is icky. There were no maggots. So she had to be underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, he's a square shooter. He's top of the line.
So he saw tattoos that he felt matched. Well, listen to this then. The first autopsy says that there's a portion of a blue flower on her chest. And maybe I don't understand how they declare a chest in an autopsy, but she had a giant blue flower on her rib cage. Nothing on her chest. To me, that's like Anatomy 101, but maybe I don't understand.
I think I've heard this. Okay.
But the thing that was most strange was the other tattoo they identified. The autopsy said there is a tattoo on her left foot with orange stars. Rebekah has a tattoo not on her left foot at all. She has a tattoo on her right foot. There are no orange stars. It's a black tattoo of a snowdrift, and there are no stars and nothing orange. The second autopsy could find no tattoos.
What is this about?
And while the cause of death is labeled drowning, in an email answering questions about Rebekah's remains, Dr. Prasher, a pathologist who is board certified by the American Board of Pathology and performed Rebekah's autopsy, states, in quotes, "A drowning cannot be determined by an autopsy. There are associated findings, but they are not determinative. A drowning is determined by the circumstances of the case, that is, the investigation." End quote. In other words, Dr. Prasher makes it clear the cause of death by drowning was determined by Mineral County's investigation and not his findings in the autopsy. The crime lab's autopsy then states that Rebekah was last seen at a beach by the river, when multiple press releases by the sheriff's office state that she was last seen at Town Pump, and no one has ever come forward to say they saw Rebekah at the beach. No water was found in Rebekah's lungs, and the manner of death, meaning either accidental or homicide, is left undetermined. As far as the second autopsy goes, they found no tattoos. They could not make out anything that resembled a tattoo in the places Rebekah allegedly had them. The young man who found Rebekah's remains, Nate Auer, is a fisherman. He found Rebekah and was with the body for quite some time, and he claims he couldn't see any tattoos. Listen to this interview.
So I'm Tommy James with Coyote Country 98.5 and Wilson Trending Topics News Radio Live, and I'm on the phone with Nathan right now. Nathan, talk to me.
No, the cops told me to be quiet.
They did. When did they tell you that?
Right as I brought them up to it.
And they just told you what exactly?
They said that keep it low and just don't talk about it at all.
Now, was she fully clothed when you saw her?
She had a sports bra and some spandex shorts on.
Sports
you
bra.
couldn't see the feet.
And okay. They have said that they needed dental records to identify it as Rebekah Barsotti. In your mind, when you looked at that, and if you heard that, what would you say to that?
That face was completely swollen, like you couldn't make out the mouth too much just because it was so swollen, you know.
Okay.
And like I said, I didn't see any tattoos or anything, so that would have been a pretty easy one for me to say if it was or not.
And the second autopsy, paid for by Rebekah's family, states, in summary, I believe the remains are those of Rebekah Grace Rose Barsotti, and that there is not an injury or other identifiable cause of death found at my examination to convincingly conclude a specific cause of death. The circumstances are consistent with drowning, but there is not any definitive marker for drowning available or found at the examination. Rebekah's family has been seeking answers for more than a year. Witnesses who are eager to speak to law enforcement have never been contacted or reached out to. Local players in this case, leaders, have tried to close routine meetings of the Mineral County Board of Commissioners to keep the public out.
And so if there's a different agenda that we don't know about, that should be specific, because we don't know that.
There are many, many more questions than answers. What happened to Rebekah Barsotti, this bright young woman who was just beginning to make a new start in life? The mystery surrounding Rebekah's disappearance grabbed Hidden True Crime's attention in the fall of 2021 when we first spoke to Rebekah's mother, Angela Mastrovito. Following that initial conversation with Angela, we followed the media's coverage and caught something Sheriff Toth stated in December of 2021 in an interview he did with News Nation. Take a listen.
Police say they've run down every lead and ruled out her estranged husband as a suspect in the case.
I believe there was foul play.
Until reliable information comes forward, there's not much more we can do at this time.
Sheriff Toth stated that if reliable evidence came forward, he would investigate.
There's no evidence. We have no evidence to lead us up to date. Just because he was charged with the crime 6 months before that or so?
Domestic violence is actually the number one reason women are murdered. 6 out of 10 female homicide victims are murdered by their intimate partner. And the most dangerous time is when a no contact order is filed. David wasn't just charged with a crime.
There's no evidence. We have no evidence to lead us up to date. Just because he was charged with a crime 6 months before that or so, that doesn't give us. They're not going through divorce. They're not going through divorce.
Sheriff Toth also mentions here in the commissioners' meeting in November 2021 that David and Rebekah weren't divorced and no paperwork was filed. And while that is true, he was also aware of Rebekah's active no contact order against her husband and knew of their separation. I assume he also knows that Montana law doesn't allow for a spouse to file for divorce until they have been separated for 180 days. Rebekah was approximately 130 days into that process. And I also found this marriage agreement in Rebekah's iCloud, stating their firm decision to divorce. Maybe the hidden true crime community could find more to share. So here are some other things that we have uncovered in the last year, things that would be reliable enough for Sheriff Toth to consider. First off, there's a man who claimed he was David Barsotti's best friend, and he called me. His name, again, Nathan Jacobson. I read some of his texts earlier. He was afraid to come forward at first, but he bravely decided to do so. Nathan sent me several hours of recorded phone calls with his friend David Barsotti. Nathan says he started recording their calls after he realized that David might have done something to Rebekah. When Rebekah first went missing, did you suspect David right away? Or did it take...
No, actually. No, not even close. I didn't. That didn't never even cross my mind until he once. Okay, so 2 comments he said to me that definitely made me feel that way. The first comment was where, the dog ended up floating up and being found, and he was like, "Oh, I could never, hurt an animal in that way or so forth," and people are trying to think that I did it. And like, what crossed my mind was like, yeah, you could. I know. I've seen you have to put a dog down with no emotion, no ties, no nothing. So that's weird. But then I didn't really think that he would do that to Rebekah until one night he says he was really drunk and on his pills, and he was barely he was slurring his words big time, and and we weren't even talking about Rebekah being missing. I can't even remember the subject what we were talking about, but he goes, man, she just crossed that line that you can't cross, and the line that she'll never come back from, and it should never be crossed again. And I was like, what? And my wife and I always had him on. Speaker, because we could talk for hours, and I'm always trying to do stuff and get things done and whatever around the house or so forth, or with my wife and stuff. So, and my wife looked straight at me, and I looked at her, and she goes, "Oh my God, he did it." And I go, "I know."
Nathan claims that Rebekah's parents hired a private investigator named John Baker, and that John Baker suggested Nathan start recording his friend David Barsotti, and Nathan agreed to do that. Lo and behold, when Nathan started recording David, it didn't take long to get some very damning recordings. This was during the time that Rebekah was still missing. David asked Nathan to help burn the Mastrovito's house down. That again is Rebekah's parents.
Okay, cleared hot. Heard?
I heard. You already told me.
All right, you know the specifics. I didn't want to send you in there without full fucking intel, okay? There surveillance and everything else. There might be people watching, so you need to make sure you cover your shit.
No, go in late, cover at night, and just set the whole place ablaze.
Can you make it look like it was an accident?
Well, I'll put up a fake cowboy camp. I'll put up a couple cannons of beans and stuff or something. With a cowboy fire camp kind of thing going on. And I'll put a gas can. I'll put a gas can sitting right there too, right next to it. Does that make sense?
Yep. No.
It looked like it was forced enough to where you could do something like that.
Looks great. Do it. Done.
Nathan sent me additional texts and photographs sent from David and David's alleged burner phone to Nathan, showing the map and area of both the Mastrovitos, Virginia home and the place they were staying in Montana. There is even talk of a kill order.
Strike me as under you, you know that I'm going to fucking handle it no matter what. Okay?
Yeah.
To pull them down or not.
Well, what's the best way to go about handling it?
Objectively, no. And we were going to go about it to where we would fucking make a goddamn war out of it. And no. But objectively, put them down.
I think at one time we almost could have done, the whole KO order. But at this point in juncture, that would point too many fingers at you, and you already got a bad enough bucket. You already got enough problems. Fucking.
I met with Nathan. He traveled to see me. He showed me bullet holes in his leg where he claims he was shot while at a car wash after coming forward with his story. I released some of the recordings on Hidden True Crime's YouTube channel. So did a true crime group called True Crime Underground. They posted additional recordings to their YouTube channel and their Facebook group called True Crime Underground, WTF Happened to Rebekah Barsotti. They cover the case there and post investigative research from many online sleuths. For a moment, I thought things were looking up, and I thought a possible criminal investigation might begin when I heard word of a search warrant issued on David Barsotti's residence in November of 2021. While that search warrant did not have to do with Rebekah's missing persons case, it did have to do with David having illegal weapons in his home. David talked about this search on some of the recordings I now have.
I'm so fucking happy that, you know what, I lost fucking 27 of my men. 27! My fucking men! They fucking died. And I watched them fucking bleed out in the fucking field.
To know that,
27 of my fucking
that none of mine, that we can't have our fucking firearms is, our Second Amendment right, So you gotta come in and fucking take them.
In January 2022, David was now not only charged with domestic violence, he was also found guilty of violating his PFMA ruling. So in other words, David Barsotti was found guilty of violating his bond after assaulting Rebekah. It did not look good for David Barsotti, but things took a completely different turn. On March 22nd, 2022, just 2 months after David Barsotti was found guilty of violating his bond, his domestic violence charge was dismissed. David's attorney argued in court in front of jurors that because Rebekah didn't bother to show up in court to testify, it was hard to prove there had really been an assault at all on Rebekah. No one mentioned that Rebekah was missing, but David's attorney drove the point home again and again that Rebekah didn't show up to court that day. Never mind she was dead and that she couldn't. Rebekah's family and supporters were gutted. But during those court proceedings, we learned something else, something hidden about David Barsotti.
Good afternoon. The evidence will show on March 9, 2021, a dispatcher, Anna May, with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call at about 12:30 a.m. The usual question, 911, what is your emergency? On this early morning, the caller states, "Hi, my husband is threatening my well-being if I do not leave the house that I own." The dispatcher asks if this is a verbal threat. The caller states, he has threatened my hands so I can't call you the next time when he threatens me. The dispatcher, you will hear, learns there are weapons in the house. The husband has been drinking. He is taking prescription medications. The caller identifies herself as Rebekah Barsotti, living at 63 Buckle Lane in Superior. The dispatcher asked, "Are you separated from him? Are you alone in a safe location?" Rebekah states the evidence will show, "No, he won't leave me alone. I keep asking him where I can seek safety, but he won't leave me alone." The evidence will show a former deputy, Patrick Nobles, with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office is dispatched to the location. During this time, Rebekah Barsotti, evidence will show, had called 911 again, stating that her husband has now separated from her and is in the master bedroom. Upon arrival, his deputy contacts Rebekah Barsotti, who is waiting for him outside the residence. Deputy Nobles enters the house. The evidence will show that he finds the defendant, David Barsotti, under his blankets, fully clothed, with an empty holster on his hip, handcuffs in his pocket, and weapons in his bedroom. Evidence will show Deputy Nobles asked him to get out of bed. You will hear the defendant admit there was a verbal argument. Deputy Nobles asked the defendant if he had threatened to shoot Rebekah's hands off. He attempts to deny this, but then admits he has no recollection of the incident or memory of making the statement. The statement that the state believes the evidence will show. So did you intend to shoot her hands off? No, what the hell? Did she say that? The deputy says, yeah. Dude, no, all right, so maybe, dude, no, I never. I have no recollection of that at all. You have no memory of that? None. The evidence will show that defendant claims to have post-traumatic stress disorder and a traumatic brain injury, which caused him to trigger from her touch. Yet the evidence will show he did not complete his military service, serving only 4 months, 11 days in boot camp, until receiving a stress fracture in his shoulder lifting weights. He then received an entry-level separation from the military. Yet on this evening, the defendant told Deputy Nobles his trigger was due to his extensive military career. Thank you for listening.
Numerous journalists, documents, and interviews have now helped us confirm this fact, that David is not who he says he is. He didn't finish boot camp, and he returned home after 4.5 months, never serving in combat.
Search and rescue was up on the Clark Fork River. My wife and I have a home on the river, and they were about a mile down. Another neighbor called me and he said, hey, there's a bunch of search and rescue people right below our house. Now he sits up higher and looks right down. He goes, they're down there. I think they're looking for the body. And for some reason, I think they may have found something. And I said, oh, all right. Well, I'll go on down there. So I drive down. There's 4 or 5 vehicles, a couple search and rescue pickup trucks. One fella who seemed to be in charge, and I used to know his name, but I can't remember it right now. He came over and he was kind of talking to me, and little did I know the other people that were standing around were texting him. Don't talk to him. He's a journalist. You know, keep this all quiet. Everything's quiet.
Sounds familiar. I know.
He finally showed that to me a little bit later on after he got to know me.
Right.
I said, I'm not here as a journalist. I'm here as a neighbor. I'd like to know what's going on here. They spent 5 days looking in this one spot, and we all knew something was down there because scuba divers and jet skis for 5 days, something was down there. But anyway, this fella that's talking to me the first day, and we're talking about, wow, it's strange, really weird. And I said, yeah, poor David, you know, going through this. And he goes, you know that he's full of crap, don't you? I said, what do you mean? He's not a combat vet. He washed out in basic training in the Marine Corps. And I said, shut up. I said, I figured there was something wrong, but I can't imagine somebody with those tales spending probably 6 weeks in basic training boot camp for the Marine Corps and talks like that. I never let David know. To this day, he doesn't know that I know. And so he continually talks about, my leg got banged up. And then I was in South America one time. I was helping out with the CIA, and we had, we took a lot of fire, and I got hit and blah, blah, blah. All this crap. I mean, this is a great story, but it's all a big lie.
I have confirmed that the VA is investigating, or at least they once were investigating, because those caretakers we've mentioned, Brandy Walker and Bevan Harkin Adams, the one who allegedly met Rebekah at Town Pump, they're full-time caretakers paid for by Missoula Aging Services with their veteran-directed care services. Despite never making it out of boot camp, here is David on this recording with Nathan.
That's what it just totally offends me about all this shit, is they're claiming that all my military career and everything was all fake. It's just like, seriously, then why are 3 out of 5 pieces of mail that come in the mail from the Department of Veteran Affairs? Why do I have 180% fucking disability rating from the Department of Veteran Affairs? Why do I have 2 caregivers that are paid for by the Department of Veteran Affairs? Why have I had 27 surgeries paid for by the Department of Veteran Affairs?
So it is happening. There needs to be an execution, and it needs to be one that is absolutely fucking unheard of. And I don't give a shit. My name is David motherfucking Michael Barsotti. And I am telling you right now that there is going to be a fucking massacre, because I am going to order it on everyone who ever come against the United States fucking military ever again.
And what is the Mineral County Sheriff's Office saying? Crickets. Is any of this enough reliable evidence to take a deeper look? And when I say deeper look, I don't mean into the rivers where you claim search and rescue performed over 2,000 hours of recovery work. I mean a deeper look into anything possibly criminal. Anything. Absolutely anything. When Rebekah's body was allegedly found on the riverbank nearly 10 months after her disappearance, on May 17th, 2022, Sheriff Toth told a local radio station that if it wasn't Rebekah's body, that the riverbank could be a major crime scene.
We didn't know for sure, until the ME ruled that it was Rebekah. If it would have came back somebody else, well, then we would have had a major crime scene.
But since it was Rebekah, no crime scene. What is going on? And when I ask what is going on, the journalist in me doesn't stop. So I thought to myself, if that's not enough reliable evidence for Sheriff Toth, what other evidence could I uncover? What would another motive be? My mind went to life insurance, something Nathan had continually brought up in conversations. The problem was, no one had been able to find anything out about what Nathan was saying.
Basically, that he had one on her or whatever, and that once they found the body or whatever, that he would have a decent amount of cash, like 300, 400K.
And then once she was found, that's when he gets the money, or?
Yeah. If she was found and declared a drowning, then yeah.
A tip did come down, and it didn't take long before Fidelity confirmed a policy under David Barsotti's name, not Rebekah. It hasn't been paid out yet because, well, it's an accidental policy. It looks as if Rebekah's death needs to be labeled an accident. The beneficiary to David Barsotti's life insurance is not Rebekah. There's a third party involved. Rebekah was a rider on the insurance policy, an accidental rider.
I don't feel like I fit in anywhere.
Those tears streaming down Rebekah's face, saying that she didn't belong, seem appropriate. Do any leaders in Mineral County care about this young woman who vanished enough to actually open a criminal investigation into her death? Not only did they close her casket, they allowed the cremation of her remains before family could even see her, before autopsy results were complete, and before photographs were taken and family informed.
I know some people get upset with me saying that, but they were not divorced. And so he does get to be notified.
With or without Rebekah's remains, there is plenty of evidence to assess. Whether or not Sheriff Toth agrees, I'd call the evidence reliable. Rebekah, even if you don't belong to Sheriff Toth or your estranged husband, you belong to the rivers and the mountain air you loved. You belong to the superior residents you never knew, those actively protesting how the county has handled your disappearance. You belong to Cerberus, to the horses you loved riding in your youth, and the equine therapy you gifted others. You belong to your mother, who won't stop fighting for answers, to your family, who stands by you in the life of service that you led. You belong to the animals you trained. You belong to the hidden community, who has been drawn to your case. While this is not the future you planned or what your family planned, as a domestic violence victim, your voice shouldn't be silenced because someone attempted to scare and silence you. Your voice shouldn't be silenced because your husband's charge against you was just a crime. And your voice shouldn't be silenced because when you couldn't speak for yourself, David's charge was dismissed. This, Rebekah, is when your voice should become louder, stronger, just like the currents of the river that bring us hope for answers. Rebekah, there is an army growing, and we will fight to make sure that you belong. Just before publishing this podcast video about Rebekah's case, we learned that the Montana Attorney General's office may have opened up a criminal investigation. Not Superior County, but the AG's office. We are holding out hope and will keep all of you posted. We hope that you have been drawn to Rebekah's story because Montana is home to many missing women, many Native American women and girls who go missing, and many more who will go missing. This isn't just a fight for an investigation into Rebekah's disappearance and death, but a hope to change laws and how investigations like Rebekah's are handled throughout the state. If you want to help, please encourage a friend or friends to listen to or watch this video podcast. Send it on. Spread the word about Rebekah. You can also join the Facebook page, Find Rebekah Barsotti, or join the Facebook group, True Crime Underground, WTF Happened to Rebekah Barsotti. Help us research, investigate, and spread the word. Hidden True Crime is also going to continue investigating. You can follow us on Facebook at Hidden True Crime, Twitter at Hidden Crime, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Hidden True Crime, to continue supporting Hidden True Crime's efforts and to find more intimate conversations about Rebekah's case and others that we follow while sitting around our dinner table. Find us at patreon.com/hidden true crime. Good night.